With our lockdown rules being gradually eased, my children will most definitely be excited with the prospect of going out more. Although it will still be a challenge because they are missing school and, of course, missing church. But how much have you been missing church? I saw a post from a friend on social media this last week, a picture of her with her family out in nature. She wrote, "This new way of doing Sabbath is very much to my liking, true rest for the soul." Welcome to Words of Hope 10. And after 10 weeks, maybe it is time to start looking at the way Sabbath and church should be post-lockdown. On the idea of returning to normal, my friend wrote, "I think I'll let Sabbath and church become just another busy day. That's going to change." She has gained a new perspective, and so has Patrick Johnson, our Ministerial Association Secretary, as he explores with us 3 key points that will affect him as he heads back, eventually, to a physical church building. We've also seen a lot more sharing since lockdown, and that includes in our TED office worship. Recorded last week, we learned how Zlatko Musija, our youth director, discovered faith and then rediscovered it. But first, this week saw TED spring meetings, a time when the Division Executive Committee met and principally take an overview of finance. So what is the financial state of the church? That is what Victor Halbert will aim to discover as he reviews the meeting with TED Treasurer Nenad Jepuranović.
Nenad, it's good to see you again. But we saw each other on Monday in our Executive Committee, our TED spring meetings. It was the shortest spring meetings ever. How did we do that? Was that your skill with the finances?
Thank you, Victor. Yes, I think we are getting more efficient with online working online. So yes, we've covered lots of financial items, but we haven't had some of the items that we usually cover in spring meetings.
In a difficult financial time, you also had good news for us, because we get a bit nervous of auditors, but we've done all right, haven't we?
Yes, I think now we are in May, but the last year looks like a distant history. But yes, it is very important that we have a good audit report, and we had for last year very good report. It is always our aim and goal to have the proper internal control in place. It is the trust that has been given to us by our faithful members, but also the reliable data is actually very important for us when we make decisions, especially in this time of the crisis.
So financially, up until January, February this year, we have been set up very well. It's now May, and the whole world has changed. Just take us very quickly through the kind of decisions we had to make on Monday. The good financial stewardship of the last several years has made things easier for us, but you had to present some difficult choices.
We have created some kind of reserve or buffer for the situations like this, and it's possibly understatement to say that this is unprecedented time. And for that reason, although the things are changing and evolving all the time, and we are learning as we go along through this crisis, and we are obviously talking to our union treasurers, we are talking to the GC as well, we had to make some choices and some contractions and some savings. And for the time being, what we've done is we've reduced quite a lot of expenses that we could without affecting our mission. For the short term, we need to answer the short-term needs and short-term challenges, but also to prepare ourselves for the longer term so that we have sustainable operations and that we can support mission. And one part of that is that we support our unions with cash flow needs, because we can assume, and that is already happening, that quite a few of our unions are having issues with current cash flows. And that is mainly due because our churches are closed. So we want to answer that current need, but also we need to make sure that we are long-term healthy and that we can support the mission the long term that we go. So it's a balancing act, it's a learning exercise. We have done what we thought is the best way forward for the time being and based on information available. However, as we go along, as we learn more, we might need to do something more as well.
So it's cautious based on where we are at the moment. And
that's correct.
You're saying we've cut back on some costs. What kind of percentage have we cut back by in order to make sure we're cautious and planning well for the future?
So on some of the expenses, like the obvious ones, like travel, that is not happening. So we cut down 45% on those. We have also cut on some other utility costs and some other costs for events and so on, and that is in a range of between 10 and 30%. However, we also, because even with all this cutting, we are, as I mentioned, we are expecting our income, our revenue for this period to be reduced. We had to take some funds from our reserves as well in order for us to continue. But that is the reason why we have these reserves. And as I said, these are the unprecedented times.
And just finally, then, you talked about helping our unions. Obviously, churches are starting to open back up in some places. And I guess the same way as we've learned to use technology more in these last couple of months, maybe our church members are as well. And online giving is going to become a bigger thing, do you think?
Definitely. Now we see the advantages or benefits of having that in place already. And some of our unions do have online giving. And yes, there is a difference now that yes, it's almost they can continue business as usual, while other unions that don't have that possibility, they are struggling a bit. So this is possibly becoming one of our priorities to enable online giving for all our entities, and we will be working on that model.
Thank you very much, Nenad. And we're going to move on into the next bit of our words of hope now, and Zlatko, who shared with us a really interesting story of his past in morning worship last week, and we just want to listen to him right now.
I'm second generation Adventist. I grew up in Adventist environment. My parents became Adventist in their teenager years. My father was a pastor, but I don't remember the time because when I was 2, he lost his pastoral credential because of family problems. You can imagine that family problems affect children emotionally, but also spiritually, especially if there is a lot of abuse in the family. But I believe that God worked, that he was doing miracle in my life, but in different ways than I would maybe expect. First, when I was 8, each child in our local church got a special gift. It was a small, brand new, nothing special, but new gift, a small Bible. And in our local church, we were 5 boys, 7 to 12 years old. And for us, this gift was so special. You know, in communist time, to have a new Bible, everybody getting a new Bible, that was something special. So we started to read the Bible, and we started to become fascinated by it. Somehow reading the Bible became our main occupation, our main game. We would spend hours and hours reading the Bible and then testing each other's knowledge. And later, when there was union competition in knowledge of the Bible, the youth from our small church were the best. Except this love for Bible, we had a really nice friendship in our youth group. We really enjoyed time together, playing together, talking together, going to nature together, reading the Bible together, as I said. And it was not easy to remain faithful to God in the village environment, but our friendship in the church gave us some kind of sense of belonging. And I feel really supported to be close to God and to church. And thirdly, another miracle is that in our local church, we were all, as kids, involved in life of the church and in mission. So all of us, we were preaching when we were 7, 8, maybe not 7, 8, but I think 9, 10. Everybody was preaching in the second part of the word, in the divine service. We went door-to-door evangelism during our primary school time. And I remember when we would come back from door-to-door evangelism that we didn't know many things from the Bible, so we decided to read the Bible, to get to know Bible more, to get to know doctrines more, that we know how to answer. And as you could guess, I was still missing something. I was missing a close relationship with God. For me, God was more a question of right or wrong doctrine or knowledge from the Bible. So I even became distant from the church. But when I was 18 or so, somebody introduced me to the relational reading of the Bible, to find in the Bible a loving, caring, a character, Father. And the beauty of God's character made my spiritual life completely different. I found out that for him, the relationships are the most important. And I can say that this is miracle. This is mighty way how God worked gradually in my life. First to bring me, to give me love for the Bible, and then to give me love for himself as a person. And also, I think that this extraordinary friendship that we had in the church and extraordinary opportunity to be fully involved in the church life made us to become closer to God. And then little by little, God wanted me to come closer in relationship to him. And I think that for me, that is the biggest miracle in my life that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Zlatko, for sharing that miracle and for seeing how friendship and involvement are so important. So how does that fit in as we start to think about the future, Sabbath, worship and return to church? Here's Patrick Johnson.
A couple of Sabbaths ago, my wife said to me, "Oh, it's been so pleasant not to have to rush to go to church." Now, that wasn't an expression from an introvert that's shy of people. No, she's completely the opposite. She's an extrovert and she gets energy from being with other people. And it wasn't the expression of, "Oh, we prefer to have a sleep in on a Sabbath morning," because we've been joining a Sabbath school discussion group from Norway. And so we've been going to Sabbath school an hour earlier. No, what I think she was expressing was the discovery that Sabbath can be so much more pleasant when we slow down a little bit. And I know that you, most likely, have been feeling the same thing too. You know, as we ease out of lockdown and start church again, are there any lessons that we can learn? Should we think about doing church a little bit differently? Should we think about doing Sabbath a little bit differently? During this lockdown period, we've basically had an enforced sabbatical, and it's helped us rediscover what life could be like when we're not as hectic as we were before COVID-19. I think it's helped us to realize that we were doing life way too fast. We were doing church too fast. We were even doing Sabbath too fast. And so the worst thing we could do would really be going back to business as usual, or even more business than usual, because now we've got Zoom to add on top of everything else that we've been doing. No, I think we have the opportunity now to rediscover that Sabbath really was designed into how we were supposed to live life. Let me read for you again, Genesis 2, verses 1 to 3, verses that we all know very well. "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." I think we can rediscover God as the designer of Sabbath, because he designed it for with at least three natural laws in it. First of all, it was to remind us that we're not defined by work. The reason why we have a 7-day week, not a 6-day week, is because God added the Sabbath to help us remember you're not just defined by your work. Secondly, I think he designed it to give us a rhythm of life. You know, you'll notice in chapter 1 where there's always this rhythm of evening and morning, evening and morning. Think about that. Evening, when we basically rest, and then morning when we wake up to work. So you rest before you work. In other words, you work from your rest, not rest from your work. And I think a third reason is that why God designed the Sabbath was to keep us holy. Remember what it says in Ezekiel 20, verse 12, "I gave them my Sabbaths as a sign between me and them, so they would know that I am the God who makes them holy." Yes, we will have some new choices to make now as we come out of lockdown. And I'm actually excited about meeting you all again, meeting my friends from church again. I think it's going to be a little bit like, when people have been on holiday and they come back with this kind of sun-kissed glow to their skins, and they're much more relaxed and at ease, and they have this aura of just calm about them. I think that's how we're going to meet each other. And I think what that can do then is it can help us to perhaps make church a little bit different to what it was. It can help us to make Sabbath a little bit more different to how we were before COVID-19. And then maybe we will be able to experience the promise that God makes in Isaiah 58. If you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord. And I will cause you to ride on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. The mouth of the Lord has spoken.
Thank you for joining us again this week. As a DED family, we keep you in our prayers. And as we head into another Sabbath, in whichever way you are worshipping, we thank you for your prayers as well. As together we seek to make God known in Europe.